We'll call the meeting to order. We'll do a roll call. Mr. Bailey,
Here.
Mr. Benesh,
Here.
Dean Board Chair is here, and Mr. Strick.
Here.
All right. We have a quorum, and so let's do the pledge of allegiance. All right.
Pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Since there's nobody here to contest us right now, we're gonna keep our general rules as what we already know without me re-emphasizing them. If someone comes in, I will go over our rules. I'll make a motion, if everybody's had an opportunity to read last month's minutes, to approve the minutes. Do I have a second? Or do I have a second?
I can't second because I wasn't here.
That wouldn't either.
I'll second it.
All right, I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, old business. Cameron?
Oh, sorry. Yes, sir. Thank you. So this is a topic of discussion we talked about last month with this text amendment for recreational open space. As I mentioned, the city council requested that staff analyze the open space criteria inside the development ordinance and update it to include a definite requirement for recreational open space. Prior to the update, there was no requirement for developers to utilize the open space for any recreational activity. It could really just be used for any type of green space is what it was reading in the ordinance. We have updated the previous version of the amendment to reflect the changes that were discussed during the last month's planning board meeting. That includes a lower minimum percentage and square footage requirement, minimum lot requirement, and a minimum active open space lot width requirement. This amendment will help ensure the developers are providing areas inside of new developments that will be for the betterment of the future tenants. A minimum of total open space is still required and measured the same way as before. And as I mentioned, we kind of discussed this and there was some topics thrown around, and a lot of this is based on some of the discussions we talked about previously. I think it was a reduction to the minimum of 20% of the total open space or a minimum of 5,000 square feet, whichever is greater, of open space shall be set aside in a recreational sense. Those are kind of listed out in the sections 10.249.6, 3, and 4. Is kind of passive and active recreations. There's two definitions that are kind of already listed out for the specific types of use that are permitted in there. So we want to kind of try and loop those back in. And like I mentioned, the width requirement, that there can't be any open space area with less than 50 feet in the shortest dimension, except for walking trails. I think there was also a requirement that when you're doing these open space developments, you need to have at least 10 lots for it to be counted for this type of criteria. So that's kind of an overview of some of the stuff that was discussed and updated. And we can kind of go into any type of discussion that we have in regards to the updates over here. So,
Great, thank you.
and I didn't read out the exceeds 10 lots in the section F of 10.249.4. So that's another one of the changes in there, but it's also highlighted in yellow, but I want to make sure you all saw that too.
Good. Thank you. I know this has been one of my pet peeves for years. I've talked about this for years, about how developers was taking our ordinance and using it to their advantage, the open space. And finally, council decided that they wanted us to look at this again, and I'm glad you guys come up with something. Me and Cameron was having a conversation earlier today about this, and I don't want us to forget the fact that if we do move to recommend and approve something like this, is that the open space is what the council was wanting, was pocket parks in these developments, not just an open field that someone's calling this our park area. And So I qualified to get my reduction in lot sizes because I dedicated so much land or I put a walking trail in. Um, and they've kind of exported that over the years. So if we look at this, I certainly would like to, make it not so ambiguous where for interpretation. In other words, I'd say if we do this, we need to put some kind of recommendations as far as what we classify as a park. Whether it be equipment, not equipment, whether it be a basketball court, not a basketball court. I don't want to tie their hands and say you have to do a basketball court, but as far as the definition of what a park consists of, I want that to be nailed down, that they can't just dedicate a piece of land and put a picnic table there and say, there's my park. So I meet the requirement of open space. The open space criteria under this 10.249.5. Actually 10.249.6, number 3, and 10.249.4. I think maybe the 249.6 with number 3, I think we need to take that out completely.
Yes, sir.
In my opinion. I'm open for discussion with the rest of the board here and see what they think. And look at more of the 2.49.4. And this gets a little bit more into what a park is: a picnic area, gardens, lawn areas, agricultural use, including raising crops or livestock. Don't know that that would be one that we would classify as a park, but, playground areas, well, the playground area, I guess anybody could say if I left an open lot here and this lot meets my lot size requirement for open space, well, that's my park. Well, that's not a playground area, just because, yes, someone can play there, but do we want to say, hey, you need to have some type of recreational equipment or playground equipment and not say specific equipment?
Yes, sir.
I don't know what the board's thought is, and I want staff's input on that, and then what you think also.
Yes, sir. Just so, I'll kind of, I guess piggyback off that as well. So the idea that Chair Ward's kind of throwing out is to, as I mentioned before, this section 10.249.6 included the aspects of, passive and active recreation. I think what Chair Ward is basically saying is we get rid of the passive piece of it, which includes, I mean, it has aspects of walkways, I think, just open spaces, picnic areas, community gardens, lawn areas, as he's saying, is something that's not necessarily, he mentions that lawn area piece of it, where you can just have a big pasture of grass and be like, okay, that's one of our usable open space areas. And more or less honing in on the active recreation space of it, whereas you're requiring, these types of uses in specific with needs of equipment, golf courses, swimming areas, playing fields. That's one that could possibly be interpreted a little bit different. So maybe even we could take the playing field aspect of it out. But I mean, that could be, I guess, classified as like a soccer field of some sort as well. So maybe playing fields could stick in there, and, we kind of hone in on that one of the ways or the other, because it kind of ties in there with courts. But, playgrounds, courts, and associated parking. And even on top of that, you can kind of throw in a caveat of in something similar likeness. So it's pretty much just throwing out the passive part of it, making sure everything's active, where they're having to construct something in these open space areas and not pretty much leaving it blank. And even if they do leave it blank, they're bringing in soccer nets or something along those lines, so we can consider it to be this active recreation open space rather than a passive per se. So that's my thoughts behind it.
Thank you, Cameron. I'm just, over the years, I've seen any developments here in Graham pop up and they use the open space, and typically the land that they dedicate to the city, or dedicate not to the city, but dedicate as the open space, is unusable land that's generally in the floodplains that they wasn't going to build on to begin with, but that helped their cause to get their lot sizes down. But, would they use a park? Would they put a park in a floodplain? Possibly they could. Will they? I don't know.
Right.
But I think that if we put some kind of limitation as far as adding equipment to, I don't know. I mean, if you go to any of Graham's parks, they got ball fields, they've got basketball goals, they've got walking trails, They've got picnic tables, they've got barbecue grills out there, they've got shelters.
Mhm.
I mean, that's what I classify as a park, and I'm not saying that I'm the authority of a park by
Right.
no means, but it's something that we need to consider in our language that allows that developer the latitude to do some of the things, but not hold his hands and tie his hands to making him do all of those things.
Mhm. And maybe even if, because I mean, some of the stuff you mentioned as well, I mean, these picnic areas could be classified. I mean, a gazebo isn't really, specified in one passive or active and, that kind of specific. So, I don't know if there's even a way, because I feel like there's a mixture between some of the passive and active that would be kind of meeting that
Beneficial.
requirement that you're kind of listing out. So I don't know if there's even like a list of potential areas, or maybe a better way to phrase, um, these types of active types of areas, because like I said, you're kind of balancing out between one or the other. Um, so that's just one of the things that's coming up in my head. Because I know a lot of times there have been some of these new developments that have been approved with open spaces with like gazebo areas. And that seems to be something you're in line with, has been approvable in that regard. So,
Or a dog park.
yeah, and
Because-
somebody could look at that and consider that to be a lawn area per se.
Right.
So, that's kind of the hard part. And maybe, both of them could be viewed as classified as that. I don't think that we view it as both of those to be just an open space area, just of grass and nothing else. I think something needs to sit on it. But like you said, I mean, it's always down to whoever's sitting and making the interpretation. And I could not be here and somebody else be like, well, lawn areas, that's lawn grass areas. So, I don't know if y'all want to talk a little bit about that and see if we can either get a list together where we can kind of X these 3 and 4 out, passive and active, and maybe just get a, more generalized area or a better kind of definement of what we're looking for out here. And we can kind of progress with that.
But could we make recommendations like, for example, like we said, courts?
Mhm.
Could we say like courts, example or recommendation, tennis court, pickleball court, basketball court?
I think
You
when
see what- That's a that way we got a little control. They
Yeah.
just can't go a court, they could just put a concrete pad out there and call it a court. But if we make a recommendation, when we say court, those are the recommendations, like a pickleball, tennis,
yeah,
basketball. What do
you
you think?
definitely could. I
As a-
think at least when I were to look at it, when you say courts, I think it generalizes a lot of that. Whenever you're kind of looking at, okay, what type of things can be had on courts? So basketball, pickleball, tennis, things of those likes.
Right.
So that one might cover your basis, but you can always make the recommendation if you want to change it, something
Right.
along those
And
lines.
it-
But
and
it's
like-
like that separation between the two.
Right.
And that's why originally, it was my thought process of, or I mean, even if we look at it from the passive, if we wanted to keep both, we could take out the aspect of the lawn areas and trails and kind of take that out of the passive, and keep both of them. And that way we can kind of move on. And then that way it's limited to, including but not limited to picnic areas, community gardens, and things of the like, however it's worded in that regard.
But what do you call a community garden, and then how big does it have to be? So I put 2 flower pots out there and I put some impatiens in it,
Mhm.
and the community can come down and plant some stuff in these flower pots. Does that meet the definition of a community garden?
Well, so that's the fortunate part of adding in the width aspect of it as well, of having to have that 50 feet of width per open space area. So you couldn't just put in 2 little pots. It'd need to be something that could fill up the open space area as a total, whether that be a community garden, gazebo, playhouse, grill area, all in that one little area. I think that's stuff that has to be combined in it. So having that minimum lot area or lot width of this kind of eliminates that piece of it.
So does that confine a developer to putting it in one place, or could he put it in portions? He could put some of it in the front part of his development and some open space in the back part of his development.
I
Is
think so.
Is that doable?
That you can put it all in one specific area, But majority of the time, if you're gonna have these things where you're required to have amenities on them, you're probably gonna space them out. Whereas, you got your pool house here on
Right.
a lot, and you got your dog park here on a lot, and then you got your community garden, your gazebo, and another area right here, grill area on a lot. That's at least 50 feet in width. So they'd be spread out across the development. I think that's the overall overview of it, is being that if they're not gonna be in one specific spot, they're gonna be spread out for the attainment of kind of everybody to have access to something in that general area. And I think that was a lot of the discussion that Mr. Huffine brought up last week. Or not last month.
Okay.
So the thought of maybe eliminating some of the language on the passive piece of it, would that be, I guess, amendable to you all, or are we kind of gonna go back to a general little area of what all you'd like to see in this active area?
I'm open to hearing what the rest of the board members have to say, and get their thoughts and opinions. And
I just have one question,
Yes, sir.
Cameron. How much control does a project review committee have, or how much say do they have in this?
Like staff wise,
Yeah.
a lot. So whenever they bring in, it depends because, when you take a look at this, there's the conditional projects that come through here as well, that you all will have the ability to review and make amendments to or requests or things along those lines. When they don't come to you all and they want to utilize this open space subdivision, that's where they're taking this reduction to lot size. Then we're still looking at it and we're doing all the calculations and making sure that all of this stuff is amendable. So they have to go through the technical review committee, which is comprised of staff, engineering, planning, public works, et cetera, NCDOT, and we're the ones that are, of course, adhering to this development ordinance and making sure their plans meet those requirements. So at the end of the day, we're the ones that either say, you're not meeting this requirement or you are.
To Tony's question, then they can't just put a slab down and call it recreation. You all would, in the technical review committee, could make that a basketball court or a tennis court or a pickleball court.
Yes, sir. And that's probably the best way to put it. It probably could have explained it a little bit well. Whenever they label something as courts, they can't just put court, right?
Right.
So they'd have to actually put something on there and say that this is a basketball court. We're gonna have 4 different goals right here. And that, once it's stamped, approved, sealed, that's what has to be placed out there. And if it's not, they're held in violation until they update it, or they're paying money or facing civil fines or civil penalties.
yeah, I'm good with that one.
Yeah, and then, and like for play fields there, can we make recommendations like a baseball diamond or something like that? You know what I'm saying? Can we, cause that, to me, we gotta try to, I'm kind of like
Yeah.
Dean, I just don't want them to throw a field out there and put some crows out there and, call it nobody never go out and use it. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? Can
What if
we-
you change it to like sports fields?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think you
Sport.
could narrow it down and say baseball or soccer, but maybe
sports
sports
field, right,
Yeah.
that's what I'm
Give a
saying.
definition of sports fields consists of soccer, baseball,
Right, and that gives them some leeway,
lets them choose.
Yes,
right, that's what I'm
And we-
saying. It gives them an opportunity to choose sports field.
Would you go sports field? Or would you include the word court in that?
So court would be its own little section. So like I said, it's kind of those golf courses, swimming areas, or sports fields, playgrounds, courts. I mean,
Okay.
you could say or pick.
No, don't want to specify
Yeah,
any particular court. It's, when you say fields, I was just making sure that it wouldn't be a grass area, for instance, if they have the option. to
you'd
put a
have to have
court in.
the goals out there and whatever it may be. So majority of the time, if they had any type of playing field, it'd probably be a smaller soccer field or something of the like with 2 goals and some lines and stuff out there.
Right, I understand it, but the wording with courts would be in there, right?
Yes, sir. So
Yeah,
it's,
okay.
it goes, like I said, golf courses, swimming areas, sports fields, playgrounds, courts.
Okay,
And-
there you go.
Yes, sir.
I'm good with that.
And back to Dean's, excuse me, Dean, I didn't even say,
That's
but,
okay.
but like you said,
Mhm.
playgrounds, can we make recommendations like equipment?
Yeah,
Like Dean, I don't want them to just put, you know what I'm saying? I want to be but I want to give them leeway too at the same
would you
time.
put like playground and associated equipment? Because of course, you're gonna have your playground, but you got your equipment and then there's always what's the
merry-go-round swings,
No, you got a box, right? And the playground isn't gonna be inside the whole box. They got.
sandbox.
Well, what's the thing that's like, it's not bark. What is it? God, I can't think of
Well,
it.
it could be bark or it could be a mulch.
Yeah,
Oh,
mulch, that's what I'm
Put that
saying.
mulch around like the
That
swing
rubber.
set, yeah.
So that's my thought process of like a playground is that general playground area and then you got your equipment inside.
Okay,
But if you wanted to, you could put playground and respective equipment.
right, that's what I'm
Do,
saying.
do you think, Cameron, and I don't know, I'm just asking this, do you think that we should put some definitions of what courts possibly could consist of pickleball, tennis? It's not saying that's
Basketball.
what the total is. That's the idea that we're thinking of courts, basketball.
Yeah, I mean, you
Right,
definitely
right.
could. And we could list a lot of this stuff out. It'd probably have to get tossed up into the top definition table. Because I think it'd have to be referred back up there. I don't know if there's really a definition side of this specific section of the ordinance or not.
If you don't think it's necessary, I mean, I don't want them to come in here, so
Yeah.
I met the criteria. You said I could put a court in, and well, I didn't do a tennis court, and I didn't do pickleball court, and I didn't do basketball court, but we call this a court.
The best part about that is if they don't agree with my interpretation, then they have to come to you all. And they have to put in,
The appeal. They
yeah,
have to
an appeal to our,
Board of Adjustment.
yeah, to appeal to y'all based on our, interpretation. So like I said, it bows back to y'all. It's like the understanding between me and y'all right now is that a court consists of pickleball, tennis,
Right.
Right,
basketball. I mean,
right.
if they put in ramps and stuff out there and it's a skate park, I mean, that's not necessarily a court, but I'm sure it could fall somewhere in that criteria.
Well, they would be recreational. They
Yeah.
would fall under recreational, I would think. I don't want to be so constrictive.
Yeah.
And I want to give that room for them because we might not be thinking out of the box as far as they are.
We could sit here all night and try and think of things that could go inside of there and they'd probably build something that we didn't talk about.
I just think
Exactly.
about the playground equipment as
Right.
Tony's emphasized, talked about it, me, myself too, that playground equipment, what do you consider playground equipment? Do you consider that as being swing sets, monkey bars? Or
Right.
do you consider that being toys?
Mhm. I think,
Put
whatever,
balls and stuff like that. We're gonna have some balls out there, basketball.
Or square, like
soccer
we're talking about with mulch out there and say, hey, this a, you know.
and that's where, of course, it always bows back to interpretation. So you put playgrounds right now, of course, in my mind, it's, you got your slides, your swing set,
Yeah.
all one
Right.
common little area. It's not just gonna be a bed of mulch out there with nothing. But like you said, I mean, there's definitely the question is if I'm not here, who's interpreting, what do they think a playground is? So, but like I said, if, playground equipment, like I said, is kind of,
The word equipment is the catcher.
and
Right,
it could, like I said, that's where you could put playgrounds in their respective equipment, just so it's, honing in on, you have to have equipment out there.
Right.
And that equipment isn't just balls or things of the like. It's gotta be something that at least fills up that space out there. And like I said, if you got a 50-foot wide area out there and you got 100-foot long, you wouldn't be able to just put a 50 by 50 playground on there. That other 50 would need to be taken into account, or that's not included in that percentage. That's just normal open space that they're providing.
Yeah.
So they're gonna meet the requirements for every single amenity that they have to put out there.
So it could be that they have to do playground equipment and maybe a barbecue grill or a shelter,
Yep.
picnic tables
Mhm.
to meet that requirement. Okay, I'm okay with that then. So do you think we need to list these out or not list them?
So, in regards to in the form of like a motion or just like how we're talking about removing, like taking the definition or not the definition, but where it says, shall be classified as recreational open space, including but not limited to, are we listing them out there or are we good with having them with the section 10.249.63 and 10.249.64 and taking out the aspects of, trails and lawn area, and then changing the language in the other one to sports fields and playgrounds with their respective equipment?
I'm okay with whatever staff thinks as far as if whatever makes it easier for y'all, either putting it in there or listing it out.
Yeah,
In the taking out the trails, I'm not opposed to giving them some kind of credit for putting in a walking trail.
right.
this not 50%, but it might be a 10% credit that you can get or a 5% credit for putting that in.
Yeah,
Cause that's something easy, low cost for a developer, which will still give him some beneficial aspect of it.
that's the hard part as well, is because, you could have a big area and that whole walking trail spanning from here to here, being its width and the area that's in it could meet that percentage requirement. And so that's kind of the toss up there, is like, if you allow it, then you have to be all right with potentially allowing that to be the only thing out there.
Well, if you give them a specific amount that you can only get 10% for this, for using this, or 5% of your overall, then it, the whole, whether it was 500 feet long or 5 miles long, he would only be able to get 5% of that as part.
But if they were to put in a walking trail with exercise stations,
Then they would meet.
but it.
That becomes more to a park.
You wanna
Yeah.
restrict that to 10% though, that's.
I don't know, that one's a little tough.
Yeah, let's take that out.
Cause you're talking about throwing it, we need Chad to
but-
be here, he'd probably be able to hook us up, but
Right, but no, that's gonna make it tough on you guys.
yeah.
Yeah, let's take that out, cause I think it'd make it too tough on the staff having to go back and forth saying, well, you really don't meet, but you might.
So, just so I'm on the same page, I'm gonna pull it up on here on the screen for y'all as well, just so you can see. We're talking about these passive, I'm actually gonna do this, I don't know if I can edit on this thing. I don't think I can. But this passive recreation, including but not limited to. So
Yes,
we're taking trails out
right,
and we're taking lawn areas out, correct?
yes.
Okay, so it's just gonna be passive recreation, including but not limited to trail, or no, picnic areas, community gardens, and
That's it.
the things of the like, I guess, things of that nature, whereas it's still like, because it doesn't specifically say like a
Not necessarily.
gazebo area, or like or we could replace it with gazebo and what's the other word, a picnic, or does it say, it has picnic areas?
Shelters, yeah.
Yeah,
But do you not think we need to put tennis courts, pickleball courts in that area right there?
so that one's on the next page, so that's
Okay.
that active one right there.
Okay,
So whenever you look at it, this,
Yeah.
this 3 and 4 section, this is what that definition is encompassing off of, is
okay.
we're taking into account all the recreational aspect of it, both passive and active.
Yep.
And including it, not now trails or lawn areas, maybe we switch trails to gazebos or,
Shelters,
shelters, picnic areas, community gardens. and then-
gazebo shelters, picnic, yeah, shelters. Cause it could be a water, they could be doing this around a retention pond and want to put a gazebo down there at the retention pond with some grills or something.
You got it. So shelters, gazebos, picnic areas, and community gardens.
Yep.
I'm just writing this down. And then for the active piece of it, we're looking at such as golf courses, swimming areas, sports
Sports.
fields, playgrounds and respective equipment,
Mhm.
courts and associated parking. I mean, if y'all wanted to, I don't know if you wanted to include the associated parking with it, or if it's,
I would think if you build sports fields,
you're gonna need somewhere to park.
well, you're gonna have to have some type of parking down there, or is everybody gonna walk from home down there to them? It's in a community. I don't wanna get too restricted, cause that could get expensive having to put parking in.
Yes, sir. It's not a requirement that they put the parking in. It's just if they had to put it out there, it could be included.
Could be included.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right.
But I guess that's another one of it's like at our discretion per se. It's like you're not gonna take up 50% of that lot area with just parking for a 200 square foot little area that you're taking out there.
All
So,
right, well, I think that parking should be no part of this.
so axed out?
Yeah,
Cool.
that shouldn't count as your percentage.
Yes, sir.
At
If
all.
you're gonna have it out there, then that's just,
That's in addition to what required.
got it. So as this reads, so now we're looking at active recreation areas such as golf courses, swimming areas, sports fields, playgrounds with associated equipment, and courts. And would y'all be like, I mean, I might add at the beginning, because it mentions it in the passive stuff as well, but it mentions like including but not limited to, that again, gives them that kind of extra little bit of layer that we may not be thinking about. So it's including these, but not limited to, but in association with
Yes.
these. So I'll add in active recreation, including but not limited to, or I guess it says active areas such as, so it kind of already listed it out there, so we don't really need to, so.
Okay.
But as for, since we got that down, I just want to turn y'all back to the percentage and the sizing of everything. I know we talked about it a lot, and Chad and I kind of worked on it a little bit to get it in line with, I think, what we want to see here and council wants to see as well. But like I said, it's looking at, you got to have at least 10 lots in the subdivision to be able to even use this ordinance. And a minimum of 20% of, the total area of open space needs to be, this recreational aspect of it, or at 5,000 square feet, whichever is greater, because there's going to be some, I guess, if they want to do a smaller 10-lot subdivision, there's a chance that it might not exceed that 5,000 threshold. So it'd be a little bit difficult to tax them with 20% if their area is going to exceed that. And then that area aspect about 50 feet in the shortest dimension.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's good.
Might need to, because we took out the things about the walking trails, didn't we?
Yep.
We should probably take out the exception of the walking trails from that one. Because it mentions, I don't know if that could have any impact on it, or because it's talking about recreational open space as defined in section 10.249.4F, which is the stuff that we were just talking about.
With the exception of walking.
Yeah, so I don't know, if that might throw a loop in, but then I guess it at least gives you something's like your walking trails don't have to be 50 feet. I just don't want them to kind of bring back and think that that's something that's approvable, even though we took it out, so. Got it.
Any further discussion? Um, I'll entertain a motion. How to make it? You want to make it? I'll make it.
You go ahead.
I'll just make a motion. Let me get to my
Thing.
motion page here.
I could, yes.
I make a motion that we approve the open space ordinance per the discussion that we had with the limitations and definitions of describing the areas that we've talked about in the open meeting. Is that sufficient?
Go, man.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on.
Yes, sir. Another text amendment for y'all. City council has requested city staff to create a text amendment that will reduce the number of historic, I spelled that wrong, resource commission members from 7 to 5 due to lack of a quorum with the current appointed members. I think we have 3 right there right now. As you can see on I put in pretty much all of the section here about the members, but it pretty much just says that the commission shall be composed of 5 members appointed by the Graham City Council. Change from 7 to 5 pretty much. I'm trying to make sure in here there's nothing else about it, and I don't think there is, so that's the only change.
Do I need to hear any discussion from anybody? I'll make a motion that we approve the recommendation of staff to reduce the HRC down to 5, from 7 to 5. Do I have a second?
Second.
Yep, go ahead.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Cameron?
Yes, sir. Last one for y'all. City staff is requesting a text amendment to the sign ordinance that allows for a no soliciting sign to be installed at the main entrance of the development, subject to certain stipulation. This request stems from a previous amendment to the code of ordinance, which finally allowed these types of signs to be approvable in the city limits. Not necessarily these signs per se, but the aspect of developments being able to limit soliciting inside of their area. So when this amendment that was approved, there was never a similar amendment in the development ordinance where staff could permit these types of signs. The amendments as this is the amendment adds this permitting aspect and adds an additional layer of approval that wasn't previously available in the sign ordinance by adding requirements on size, location, and entity who can install signage. This one's a little bit different. We had somebody call and ask about installing no soliciting signage. I think it was last year. City council made a change to the code of ordinance that, because previously there was no prohibition on anybody not allowing solicitors to go inside of their development. They made a change last year that now allowed HOA entities to not allow these types of solicitors to come. I think there's a blank few that they can come in there and do stuff. But if somebody were to come inside the development, now with the ordinance change, they can, I guess, call the police on them and have them escorted off the development area. But there was never anything that said they could install signage for it in the development ordinance. So technically, if signage was installed, it was not approved or approvable. So this adds in an exemption into the sign ordinance that allows these to be installed by the HOA entities at the front entrance of each development, and kind of go from there. So I know there's probably gonna be some discussion on this one, and I'm open to answering whatever I got.
It's not arrestable offense. We're talking about a civil matter. So we're opening up a can of worms by allowing developments. You can put the sign up and you can meet our sign ordinance, but it's
Mhm.
not gonna stop anybody from going in there. If it's a public street, I can walk down the public street, I can walk down the public sidewalk. Can I go to your door and knock on your door? Well, the sign says I can't, but if I do go to your door and knock on your door, nothing you can do, no more than you can do right now.
Yeah,
You can pick up the phone, you can call the police, say, I want this gentleman trespassed off of my property. I think it's a lost cause for us. I support what you've done.
yes, sir.
I'm not opposed to it, but I don't think you can win anything. The HOAs are not gonna win anything out of it. It's not gonna prevent anybody from doing the knocking.
Yeah, and I follow, and that may be the case, but as for right now, there's nothing that, because it's allowable for an HOA to have the code, let me pull up, I'm trying to pull up the code of ordinance and exactly what it says.
So
and-
Cameron, it's similar to a no trespassing sign. If you put it up, it actually hinders no one from going on that property. The law will tell you that man or person has to be told personally. And so the homeowner or the HMO would have to tell whoever that group or people or person is. The sign basically is null and void.
It don't mean anything to us. And now if council wants to go further and make a city ordinance that it's a criminal offense, a misdemeanor, that the police department has some teeth that they could charge someone under the city ordinances versus a criminal.
Yeah. Well, that's what it well, no, huh? I
It
gotta
would be
find
a
it.
civil deal.
You know, I told staff a long time ago, we need to change a lot of our stuff to civil
Yeah.
where you can do enforcement and then fines, and those fines come back to the city.
Yeah, so this is what was specifically changed. I guess it wasn't here before where the city allowed for these people to go on here. It says if it interests to a neighborhood with a property owners association, a visible sign that says no soliciting or has comparable language indicating that solicitation is unwelcome has been posted by the association pursuant to the authority granted to it. It shall be a violation of this section for a solicitor to go on to or into any private premises in that neighborhood, regardless whether that particular residence has a no soliciting comparable sign postage for the purpose of soliciting orders for the sale of, disposing, peddling, hawking of goods, wares, merchandise. That's where this is coming from, is because there's a development that currently has a no soliciting sign out in front of it. Well, there's a couple, but technically it's not approvable. It says here that they can have it, but that it here saying that they can have it also means that they could put it in 20 by 20 with big red letters that says no soliciting. So you're cool with that?
Well, I'm not cool with us charging a fee for something we can't enforce.
Well, it's not a chargeable fee, it's an
So
exempt.
we're gonna charge a fee for
Oh.
the application for the sign.
So the sign wouldn't,
So the staff is not gonna charge a fee for the,
so that's why it's in the exemption section. So whenever it's exempt from any type of sign permitting, it's just something that is there now that we have. It's an exemption as long as it meets these requirements. If it doesn't meet these requirements, then it's not permitted at all because it's not anywhere else listed. So this allows them to have a 4 square foot sign,
Right.
1 4 square foot sign at the entrance of each development that says no soliciting without having to pay for anything to meet this ordinance requirement right here.
I have to come to the city to apply for my permit. Do I have to get a permit?
No, because it's an exemption. You'd have to call the city
Just
and,
call and say I'm putting a sign up and you're gonna say, hey, I'm the planner and it's gotta be 4 foot.
yep, and then we'll go out there and we'll take a look at it. If we don't, if you don't call and we see it and it's above 4 square feet, we'll tell you that
Take it
it's,
down.
yeah, and you gotta make it to where it's amendable and now it's 4 square feet.
Want that extra work for nothing, I'll give it to you.
It's a matter of people that don't have it now, that really want it, but we can't allow them to have it because there's nothing that says that they can have it.
So they're basically wanting to put up a deterrent,
Right.
is
Based
what it's
on-
for,
Based on what this
but
ordinance,
there's no enforcement on by the city and
Right.
at all, no connection to any civil penalties.
there's it says that they will be in violation of this section. So
But what is that section?
this section is something about,
But is it a misdemeanor? Is it a misdemeanor?
I don't
Yeah,
think so.
where's
It's not
the-
a city ordinance, so
where-
the city.
It is the
ordinance-
city ordinance through here, so, I mean, this is the article about canvassers and solicitors permit. Any individual not traveling by foot or conveyance. So it's pretty much if they don't, cause I don't even know if we have like. We used to not, now we do.
So Girl Scouts can't come by and sell me no cookies?
No,
That's true.
Basically, yeah.
That's soliciting.
So the Girl Scouts can't sell me no more cookies?
I think so. I can't, either we do, or there was, at one point in time, I thought that we didn't allow it at all. Like, nobody could come, like, it was always in violation, and now it's allowable, but if these people have it in front of their development, then you are not allowed to go on there.
But what's the enforcement? What's the penalty for doing it?
There's not.
They're in violation of this ordinance. That's all I can, that's on the code enforcement side of it. So there's not a misdemeanor aspect of it, but that does now give them permission and I guess classification where if they have to, they can call the police and they can, there's an entry in here that says that there should not be here at all. So the police can get called and they can be escorted off.
So that this, I will support whatever you want, but it just
Yeah.
puts more workload on the police department. It puts more workload on staff here, having to go by and check that sign for
Yeah.
the size requirements. We can't, you're not gonna charge for a permit fee. You've already said that.
Mhm.
So is it really worth dabbling in?
I think so, because this has already been, what I'm pointing out right here has already
You-
been approved by city council.
If you think so, let's go with it. Anybody got anything?
It just.
But the biggest thing is the dimension of the sign is what I'm interpreting. and right-
That's the only thing that I care about, is
Right.
that
It's the
there's,
dimensions of that
they can't put up a
Huge,
bill like that City of Graham sign
Right.
behind y'all that says no soliciting.
right.
And because if they did it, then right now, I don't know if there's really a way where we could tell them they gotta take it down. I could tell them that there's no mention of this inside of our ordinance, so it's not approvable, but it's better to have something and be able to refer back to it and be like, this is,
So
you
what,
gotta meet this requirement.
so to what Tony's speaking of and exactly what I'm reading out of this is basic, if you want to put a sign up, you put a sign up, but it can't be any bigger than this.
That is, yes, sir, that's correct. Based on this ordinance
Right.
that allows HOA entities to not allow for solicitors on their property anymore. Because I think they are allowed to come through in the city limits now. Because I mean, you got people downtown as well that do it too, right? I mean, that's soliciting in itself, isn't it? People that'll sit there and hand out the Bible stuff. So
Is there any exemptions for soliciting?
This is,
that one,
How you'll go by the interstate.
Yeah.
uh-huh.
They do not allow that. I do know that because we had a gentleman come in to the permit office, do that. And they told him, Brandon did not.
So
I
does,
know that.
so does that stop Girl Scouts from selling cookies?
if they got a no soliciting sign up there, I think it's like
I
this,
mean, can we put some exemptions in there for
that.
nonprofits or anything like that? I mean,
That is one of them that's gonna have to come, because that's in front of city council, because all the soliciting stuff is inside the code of ordinance. I just wanted to write something over here that now since they said that people can put up no soliciting signs, that we can point to something that you can't have anything above this size sign.
All right, Cameron. So if they go over and put a bigger sign, let's say a 6x6, is there any way you can enforce that
Yep.
or give them or charge them or give them, say, you got 30 days to remove this sign or
Mhm.
what? It'll be
$100 a day,
$100 a day.
Yep.
Okay. All right, that's what.
up until like 30 days, and then I think it will
Right.
be taken down by the city.
We follow the sign ordinance.
Do, like,
The city of
Does the
Graham.
City of Graham follow the sign ordinance.
I try my best to.
I mean, I know they're exempt per law, they're exempt, but I know this was brought up in the last sign discussion. We had the sign down there at the
Yeah.
wastewater treatment plant that somebody wanted to put a billboard on City of Graham, and it didn't meet the sign requirements.
So there has been some other discussion about that, and, you know, I have looked into it a little bit, and there is some exemption on the local government side, but I think there's still specific aspects of the sign ordinance that have to be met. I know there's some talks about maybe more city signage around here. That's something we'll discuss internally and kind of go from there, so.
I would just like to see if we approve something like this and we're gonna create more workload for the police department. That they have some teeth.
This has already been approved though, like the police
There's no
department was approved last year.
There's no enforcement action here. This is a civil side of this. This is not a criminal side of this. So there's a difference between civil and criminal.
Okay,
The city has the ability to have a civil code of ordinances.
yeah,
And in that civil code of ordinance, it can issue fines, not criminal
Right.
offenses. They can't be arrested, but you can get fines, and then the city can enforce those fines through the city attorney.
it's like parking downtown,
Parking
right?
downtown, so all that money comes back
To the city.
The city.
I will try and, because I don't, the signage piece of it isn't going inside the code of ordinance. It's going in the development ordinance. So it's still separate, whereas the sign stuff is just for my purpose over here. This was approved back last year whenever it was brought forward by one of the city council members, I think. So I would love to sit here and discuss a lot of this stuff with you, but like I said, this is something that was approved a long time ago, so.
I'm gonna call Chief Cole tomorrow and ask her to put a tag on this and tell me how many calls they get on this.
Please.
Cause I really wanna know this is just the wasteful use of city funds in an aspect of calls that's gonna be generated, because evidently they're having some type of problem because they wanna put this sign up, and by all means, I recognize the problem that they're probably having.
Yep.
But now they're gonna call the police department, police department's gonna go down there and gonna do the same thing that I'm doing to you right here. This is a civil matter. There's nothing we can do about it. If they're on your property, we can tell them to leave and we can trespass them. And if they come back, we can arrest them.
Mhm.
But we can't do nothing about it today. They're standing on the sidewalk. This is a public street, public sidewalk. There's nothing they can do.
Hey, I'm just here for the sign part of it. Like I said, all this was, it's just, whenever this whole thing right here about the entrance ways, things along those lines, they approved it sometime last year.
Okay.
So that was the city council. I don't have much to do with the code of ordinance side of it. Code of ordinance updates doesn't even come through y'all. It goes directly to the city council. So-
Needs to be coming through us. We'd have it a little tighter around here.
Hey, I appreciate
Any
the discussion.
discussion here on the
My-
board?
My only discussion,
All right.
I understand the size requirement, but
I do too.
it's just too much government when you're gonna tell them where the location is and how many they can put in their development. I'm sorry.
Hey,
I'll be a no tonight.
Okay, that sounds good. That's several. So let's,
I'm with you.
does any more discussion?
No, sir, nothing further from me, sir.
Yeah.
So,
Make a motion to approve the language of the sign. How did they put that?
I'm putting no soliciting sign.
No soliciting sign in the HMO area to be no larger than 4 square feet.
do I have a second? Do I have a second? With no second, motion is quashed, and I'll entertain another motion.
I would make a motion that we exclude it from permitting and requirement. And we include the size of not to exceed 4 square feet.
Can I ask for some clarification? There's no permitting at all already. So when it's in the exemptions, they don't have to pay for any type of permitting fee for it. They just call us and tell us what they want to put out there. If it's no bigger than 4 square feet.
Okay. I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'm just kind of confused by
I
the
am
motion,
too.
I guess.
Yeah, because that really meets the requirement that Mr. Benesh had.
Yes.
Right.
They we couldn't get a second on.
Yeah.
It's the same because it was
No,
the
no.
requirement.
It's basically
I
the
don't
same.
So,
think-
hold on, let
I don't
me,
think We should restrict location and numbers. If you want to restrict it to a 1x4 or 2x2 or 4 square feet, I'm okay with that.
The
What I'm
size,
not okay with is telling them where they have to put it.
the
and how
entrance
many,
or the, and how many,
Yeah.
okay.
but it's
Well,
y'all have a motion. I mean,
That's
at the
what
end
Mr.
of the day,
Badee said.
this is
Don't have a
also,
second yet.
I
right,
know, but it's a recommendation as well.
Okay.
You know, so I don't know what more I could kind of explain with it, but, I'd much rather have it at the entranceway than have 13 of them running along every single public right-of-way area where they have these things located at. So limited, because it's the HOA entity that's putting it up. It's not the property owner. You as a property owner are still allowed to put your no solicitation sign up. But this allows the HOA entity that you pay your dues to put them up there and let whoever's coming through know that this community does not allow solicitors. And that is something that is decided upon the community members themselves and the HOA. So that HOA community would have to vote whether or not they want to even put the sign up out there. I just,
As a former president for 3.5 years of a HOA in Durham,
okay,
I am okay with the size requirement. I am not okay with the city telling me where I can place them and how many I can place in my community.
All right. We have a motion. Is any other discussion about Mr. Strickland's?
Mr. Stocker.
Stockard, I'm sorry, Mr.
Stockard.
Stockard's, motion? If not, second it.
Huh?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Anything else, Cameron?
No, sir, that is all I have tonight.
That's it.
Cameron, you're fighting a losing battle on this one.
I'll wait till this thing turns off.
All right, I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
I second.
All right, all in favor?
Uh,